From a generational wonderkid to a Premier League flop to a convicted criminal, this is the tragic story of Fabio Paim, the sporting star who was supposed to be better than Cristiano Ronaldo, but threw it all away before his career even started. This former prodigy was recently on a podcast saying again that he could have been better than Ronaldo, and the man himself actually clapped back. But we'll get back to that later. But 20 years ago, the two were much more friendly. When Cristiano arrived at Manchester United, he said, quote, "If you think I'm good, just wait until you see Fabio Paim." And that praise was warranted. Born just west of Lisbon, Paim grew up humbly with his mother and 4 siblings. Coming up in the streets, the youngster's talent quickly became undeniable. He had the dribbling to beat anyone, could play a killer pass, and had a laser for a shot. The player he was compared to as a kid was the great Ronaldinho. It was this talent, at just 8 years old, that landed the boy with Sporting Lisbon. In these next years, he shared the pitch with some future Portuguese greats, like Nani, João Moutinho, Rui Patricio, and of course, Cristiano Ronaldo. And as hard as it is to believe today, it was Fabio Paim that showed the most promise of all of them. From the moment the boy arrived at Sporting, coaches were telling him all the time that the sky was his limit. Little did they know the devastating turn his career was about to take. Some say Paim's own talent is what killed his career, and in a way, that could be true. By 13, he was already tipped to be Portugal's next starlet. Hundreds or even thousands would show to his games and even his training sessions just to get a glimpse of what the locals were calling the next Eusebio. He even signed with super agent Jorge Mendes, and with that, he was on the radar of Europe's giants. According to Paim, even the French national team tried to lure the boy to play for them instead of his homeland. He did in fact play for Portugal though, and was even given the iconic number 7 shirt. The hype was real, and it was not slowing down. Simultaneously, another young sporting starlet had just landed in Manchester and had just poured even more fuel on the fire. But unlike with Cristiano, Sporting didn't want to lose this youngster. To fend off outside interest, they signed him to a professional contract at just 15 years of age. All of a sudden, this boy was earning more than most of Sporting's first team players. Imagine making over 250,000 euros a year before you even turned 16. Would you have turned into the same person? Or would you have perhaps let the money change you? Unfortunately for Paim, it would be the latter. He owned a Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, Maserati, and even more before the boy even had a license to drive them. Having all this money and being that famous made the young Paim think his success was inevitable. He stopped training hard, his work rates diminished, and the boy started to let injuries take over his body. Before anyone knew it, Paim was approaching his 20s, yet to make an appearance as a professional. With Sporting still unconvinced he was ready, the next years would see him finding his feet in the Portuguese 2nd division. To put it lightly, the kid struggled, as his teams were either horrible and going winless, or his coaches wouldn't give him the playing time he thought he deserved. And off the pitch, things were getting even worse. Paim would escape these struggles he had through alcohol and drugs and relentless partying. Whether he liked it or not, his reputation was beginning to shift away from the surefire superstar that he was once hailed as. And it was just a preview of what was to come. While another Portuguese talent was approaching his first ever Ballon d'Or, Fabio Paim's career was hanging on the edge. After 3 failed loan stints, he had stopped getting called up for Portugal, he was still yet to play for Sporting, and his attitude was not improving. But then, out of nowhere, Chelsea came calling. In a wild turn of events, Luis Felipe Scolari, just coming off a stint coaching Portugal, wanted to give Paim a fresh start. So, Paim joined Chelsea that summer on loan with an option to buy. It was just the lifeline that he needed. All of a sudden, the 20-year-old found himself in the perfect scenario. His super agent got him a second opportunity with a manager that believed in him. Even in the youth team where he played, he had Brendan Rodgers on the touchline, a very capable mentor for Paim. But instead, he would throw it all away. On arrival, he doubled down on working hard. How this, quote, is the opportunity of a lifetime. But his drinking and partying only got worse. His off-the-field antics would continue, and he fell out with Rodgers over, again, his playing time. One time it said he even asked Didier Drogba to drive into a training session, but forgot about it completely, leaving the Ivorian outside of Paim's house pretty much stranded. Despite the flashes of talent, the Chelsea hierarchy gave up on him after just 3 months, so back to Sporting he went. In January he started training with Rio Ave, but soon they gave up on him too. At the end of the 2009 season, everyone was on the same page about Fabio Paim. He was simply a flop. One of the biggest football had ever seen, in fact. It seems even Paim knew this, because in his own words, he was mentally retired by 22 years old. Soon enough, Sporting released him from his contract, leaving the winger without a club and completely broke. Now a year after Scolari had saved him, Paim's career had fallen off the cliff. He was officially at rock bottom. From then on, he just became a journeyman. He had stints in Angola, Qatar, Malta, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Poland, and many in the Portuguese third tier. Least surprising of all though, he would never spend over a season with any of these clubs. I wonder why. It was his off-the-field antics, of course, which most of the time of his career was just downright delinquency, carelessness, but eventually that crossed the line to outright criminal behavior. Multiple accusations of sexual assault and public indecency was capped off in 2019 when Paim was arrested on suspicion of drug trafficking. A decade after he was talked about as Portugal's next Eusebio, he was spending a year behind bars. The worst part of all this, his prison cell had a view of where the Portuguese national team would train. Oftentimes, he would stand by his window, literally watching his former teammates, no doubt thinking that he should have been there with them. It was a perfect analogy for what was one of the most wasted careers that the sport had ever seen. Now we fast forward to the present day, where Paim is out of prison and still lives a decent life in Lisbon. He'll often make appearances on TV shows and podcasts talking about his time with Ronaldo and Portugal and all this. But it was a recent appearance on a podcast that made headlines where Paim perhaps stepped out of line. When asked about his mentality, he claimed that he would be on par with both Ronaldo and Messi if he had, quote, half of Cristiano's mentality, even teasing that some of their Ballon d'Ors should be his. Cristiano has since responded to these claims on Instagram, commenting this little message. It was a cheeky little joke, but it was a far cry from his words 20 years earlier about the same man. The boy hailed as a small Ronaldinho, the next Eusebio, or the next sporting superstar who was supposed to be better than all these legends, has no one else to blame but himself for the way his career turned out to be. Thank you.